Amazing transformation. Millionaire discovers little girl. Exiled for a spoon of milk. Revealed. Jack Thompson's eyes fell on the neglected house, a dilapidated shell of what it once was nestled amidst the trees of his childhood street. The home was drenched in whispers, stories of a girl named Emma who had become a pariah for taking a spoonful of milk from a neighbor's cow. A shiver of recognition pulsed through him. Growing up, he too had known how hunger felt, yet here he was, a self-made millionaire who had built a tech empire from nothing. He felt an uncanny sense of irony that clung to him like a dirty old coat. Jack had shaken off the heavy weight of oppression, forged his own path. Yet with wealth came an unwelcome chasm, a rift filled with guilt and a creeping alienation from the community that once defined him. The glances and rumors flooded his mind. What would they say if he stepped in? A millionaire swoops in to save the day, a notion that struck him as both heroic and naive. Navigating the town's social fabric, it was a dangerous game. The tension sharpened as he recalled childhood dinners where his own family had shunned those less fortunate, the cruelty hidden behind pious smiles. Jack's internal landscape grew tumultuous, marked by questions that clawed at his conscience. Would he be seen as a savior or a status-seeking interloper? His heart raced. The very thing that drove him, the desire to uplift, felt heavy with ambivalence. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jack's feet dragged through the cool grass that day, a storm brewing within. How could he reconcile the contradictions? His privilege felt like a mantle, suffocating him, deeming him a fraud amongst the very struggles he sought to understand. The weight of decisions loomed larger with every passing moment. Would advocating for Emma diminish the narrative of his own ascent? He moved forward, pulling himself towards the idea of a private meeting with Emma's estranged family, a decision that held both promise and peril. The anticipation tore at him. Would Emma be wary? Would her family reject his help outright? Each envisioning spiraled deeper into despair, yet a flicker of determination glimmered. How could he allow them to continue suffering, sacrificed on the altar of social judgment? With clenched fists and a racing mind, Jack pictured the reunion. Raw emotions, fragile truths, and the possibility of mending broken hearts. The looming confrontation felt electric, an unstoppable force against a formidable wall of stigma. But as he prepared to act, panic surged within him. What if he failed? What if he plunged headfirst into darkness? These thoughts suffocated him. He stood at the precipice of a decision that would shape his future and challenge his identity. A millionaire caught between two worlds, questioning whether he would choose compassion over convenience. The burden bore down harder. Emma's fate hung in the balance, and he was trembling on the edge of a truth he wasn't sure he could bear. Jack stood rooted in the grass, feeling the weight of uncertainty wrap around him like a thick fog. The time for action was upon him, yet he felt more like a boy lost in the woods than a man of influence. Would stepping forward lead him closer to the person he wanted to be, or would it expose layers of himself he had long buried? He inhaled deeply, resolving that he could not allow fear to shackle him. Jack's mind raced with strategies, and he forced himself to imagine the meeting with Emma's family going well. Perhaps they would see the sincerity in his eyes and recognize the potential for healing that lay in his willingness to help. This hope was quickly followed by darker thoughts. What if they were unwilling to accept anything from someone like him? As he approached the creaking front door of the house he'd so often driven past, he felt his palms begin to sweat. The house was a mirror of both poverty and history, a sanctuary filled with memories of a girl who had unknowingly carried a burden far more significant than her years. Duty urged him forward, but self-doubt pulled back. What had he become? As the door opened, he was greeted not by a living room, but by silence, a palpable absence that seemed to echo the lost childhood of Emma and the scars carried by her family. He steeled himself, ready to peel back the layers of their story and his own. The family was seated at a worn table, eyes flickering between surprise and apprehension as they recognized him, Jack Thompson, the millionaire. There was no mistaking it. He was a stranger in the very world he claimed to want to help. This was a confrontation of identities, one that he could not sidestep. "Why are you here?" Emma's mother finally asked, her voice steady yet laced with suspicion. The air thickened with expectation, and in that moment, Jack felt stripped bare. His economic success felt hollow in the face of their palpable pain. He swallowed hard, knowing that any misstep would sever the fragile possibility of connection. "I came to help," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "I want to support Emma. I understand more than you might think about where she comes from." Needles of accusation pricked at him, but he pressed on, presenting an offer, essentially what he believed could ease some of their burden. The mother's gaze, however, didn't soften. Instead, it hardened. "You think money can fix this?" she shot back, her anger general yet personally directed at him. That question echoed through Jack, displacing the illusion of his previous certainty. As he attempted to explain that his heart was in the right place, he could feel walls forming. Solid, imposing walls. Was he truly so blind to believe that wealth could build bridges where only despair had bred? Suddenly, doubts engulfed him, forcing him to confront an unsettling realization. He had yet to engage meaningfully with his own past and how it intertwined with theirs. Becoming a millionaire hadn't absolved him from the experiences that had shaped his understanding of suffering and hunger. The conversation faltered. Silence gripped the room again, this time heavier than before, as the weight of truths left unspoken filled the gaps. Jack had come to offer help, but what he felt in this moment was a profound disconnect. Would they ever see him as anything more than a distant figure, adorned with wealth but lacking understanding? Just when he thought the talk might dissolve entirely, the door creaked open again. In walked Emma, a child wrapped in the innocence of youth, yet carrying an unspoken grief that belied her small stature. Jack's heart constricted with a mixture of urgency and determination. She was the key to their story, an embodiment of everything he wanted to change. Now, standing before Emma, Jack could feel the shift in the air, demanding action, an awakening, as if the ghosts of both their pasts could finally converge into a path forward. But how would he bridge the chasm of misunderstandings between them? What truths remained hidden behind their walls? In that moment, Jack realized a painful but essential truth. It was time to confront his own shadows, the very source of his guilt. The meeting was no longer about simply lowering the barriers. It was about understanding, and he would have to earn that understanding. The air crackled with tension as he gazed at Emma, and it dawned on him. This had become much more than a mere business venture. This was his reckoning, a confrontation not just with her family, but with himself. The moment had come to face the uncertainties and draw the lines where compassion could meet reality. And he knew, despite the weight on his shoulders, he could only take the next step by allowing them both to connect over their shared grief, by stepping into Emma's world for real. As Jack locked eyes with her, the real question loomed. Would he have the courage to lay open his past, ready to stand by a girl who had been so unjustly oppressed? In that aching silence, their futures hung in the balance, waiting for a simple answer. Jack stood in that moment of charged silence, aware that this was a crossroads of sorts. The weight of his own insecurities threatened to crush him, yet the urgency of Emma's presence ignited a rebellious spark within. He could no longer shy away. If he was to be a beacon of hope, he needed to pull back the veil of his past and confront the very fears that had kept him locked away. As he knelt to be at eye level with Emma, the little girl's brow furrowed in confusion. She was a fragile creature, yet there was an unmistakable strength in her gaze, one that demanded authenticity. "Why do you want to help me?" she asked, the innocence in her voice underlined by a wisdom far beyond her age. Jack found himself wrestling with that question. Was he trying to brush guilt away with charity, or was he truly moved by a purpose greater than himself? "I want to be a friend," he managed to reply, feeling the power of those words wash over him. In that instant, he knew friendship would require him to unmask the fears that had kept his compassion shackled. He had spent years accumulating wealth and accolades, all while neglecting the emotional currency that truly mattered. Emma tilted her head slightly, searching his eyes for answers. "But friends don't just have money, do they?" Jack flinched at her straightforwardness, but he welcomed the discomfort. Her question pierced the pretenses he had built around himself. It was no longer just about being a benefactor. It was time he embraced vulnerability. "Friends share stories," he began, his voice trembling yet resolute. "Friends listen." Jack took a deep breath, allowing the flood of memories from his own childhood to surface. The loneliness, the yearning for connection that had driven him to succeed. He opened his mouth, ready to share the painful fragments of his past, but words failed him momentarily. The room felt charged, every second stretching painfully, tinged with a vulnerability that felt foreign, but intoxicating. He looked back to Emma, who had shifted her small hands nervously on her lap. The air was thick with anticipation, and Jack could almost feel the walls of distrust dissolving as he laid bare the corners of his soul. "I wasn't always this way, Emma. There was a time when I didn't have much. I remember staring at the same walls of despair as you." Emma's eyes widened, and Jack continued, allowing the weight of each confession to fall free. He recounted his childhood in a small town, feeling the painful echoes of hunger and neglect. He didn't embellish. He spoke of the grit that adulthood had masked. Each revelation seemed to draw Emma closer, her innocent resilience offering Jack an unexpected strength. She leaned in, her focus unwavering as he spoke of his mother's struggles, the dreams that flickered and faded, dreams that mirrored the invisible burdens Emma carried. Within him, he felt something shift, a liberation that began to illuminate the darkness of his past. It was as though that sharing had unlocked not only a door of empathy between them, but also a portal to his own healing. He realized that he was no longer just a millionaire trying to save a child. He was a broken man, trying to mend himself in the company of another. But in the way Emma studied him, Jack saw a flicker of doubt. Perhaps she was struggling as much with his honesty as with the intensity of the moment. The tension veiled the difficult truth that their realities were entangled yet disparate. He needed to bridge the gap, a daunting prospect yet crucial. "Can we start anew?" he asked, scrutinizing the gravity of those words. "I'm willing to help, truly help, but I need to understand your world, Emma." At that moment, he knew that understanding wasn't merely transactional. It was built on the foundation of shared experience, mutual pain, and the promise of unwavering support. Emma nodded, the flicker of trust igniting in her eyes. But at the same time, sharp spikes of uncertainty peered from behind her expression. The weight of the past was still there, shrouded in her small shoulders. They both had journeys littered with shadows that needed addressing. In his heart, Jack felt readiness entwined with fear. But he also sensed that in truly walking with Emma, he might find a sense of purpose binding their intertwined destinies. As they stood together, a millionaire and a little girl, Jack understood that their shared grief was merely the beginning. With every ounce of sincerity, he sought to uncover their truths, laying a path for the future that awaited them. The door to real dialogue had opened, but looming ahead was the challenge of breaking past emotional barriers. As he prepared for that crucial step, Jack could not shake the feeling. They needed each other, but more importantly, they needed to confront the unsettling silence that had cloaked both their lives. What deeper truths remained hidden within Emma's guarded demeanor? Jack felt the weight of new revelations pressing upon him, and he realized the journey had only just begun. The path toward real transformation lay ahead, riddled with uncertainties begging to be unraveled. Jack's determination pulsed through him like a living thing, urging him onward. As he looked into Emma's bright eyes, full of curiosity and apprehension, he knew the time had come for deeper truths to surface. The notion of friendship was intoxicating, but the process of earning it would be painstaking. He was awash in self-doubt, yet buoyed by a newfound purpose that blazed brightly against the backdrop of his past. "What do you like to do, Emma?" he asked, trying to divert attention from the emotional intensity that simmered between them. The question felt like a shallow dive into her world, but something compelled him to begin somewhere. Anywhere. She shifted thoughtfully, visibly weighing the options in her mind. "I like to draw. It makes me feel free," she said finally, a spark igniting in her voice. "Can I see some of your drawings?" Jack prompted, heart racing at the prospect of sharing something intimate. He feared that his vulnerability was misplaced, yet he couldn't hold back the impulse to draw her out. A hesitant smile broke through Emma's wall of uncertainty. "Okay," she said, "but they are not very good." As she retrieved a worn notebook from the corner of the room, Jack felt a knot tighten in his chest. What if her expressions revealed not just talent, but the very struggles that mirrored his own? Would he be able to handle the truths that lay beneath the drawings, cloaked in metaphor and innocence? Emma flipped through the pages, revealing a cascade of images that made Jack's breath hitch. Some were colored in vibrant hues while others were faint sketches, but all bore a haunting quality, a restless energy that hinted at an emotional depth. There were scenes of city life, landscapes that felt both familiar and foreign, and haunting portraits that captured a girl on the edge of something profound. "This one is my favorite," Emma said, her finger tracing an image of a girl holding a bird, her expression a mix of longing and hope. Jack felt an unexpected pang in his chest. It was akin to looking into a mirror, one laden with cracks yet revealing a raw beauty he had never acknowledged. "What does it mean to you?" he probed gently. "It makes me feel like someday I'll be free, too," Emma replied, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of desperation and aspiration. The weight of her words ignited an ardor within Jack, propelling him forward yet again. "But I'm stuck right now. It feels like I'm just waiting for something to change." He nodded slowly, the realization washing over him like cold water. He, too, had felt the same suffocating pain of stagnation. The parallels between their lives were startling. Both were ensnared, caught up in the weight of their circumstances. Jack could see that Emma's vulnerability mirrored his own, a jagged past chasing them both, yet they stood in this moment, vulnerable together. He had wanted to save her, but now he understood. They needed to save each other. "Then let's help each other," he suggested, a spark of determination igniting within him. "Let's make a plan. We can find ways to feel more free, together." The words tasted unfamiliar, but hopeful on his tongue. Emma's brow furrowed, a moment of indecision floating in the air between them. You would really want that?" "Absolutely. I've been trapped for too long, Emma. It's time to break free together." The fragile girl nodded slowly, lingering uncertainty still flickering in her eyes. But Jack saw something beyond it, a budding trust, a promise of partnership. In that moment, he felt the gravity of his promised metamorphosis, a burgeoning duality where both their paths could intertwine. But lurking behind their hopeful exchange loomed an unsettling question. Could dialogue transform into action? Jack recognized the treacherous waters they were about to navigate. He was determined to venture into the depths of both their experiences, but the consequences of unearthing buried emotions threatened to overwhelm him. In that haze of newfound camaraderie, Jack felt a stirring within, a stirring that was familiar yet terrifying. What challenges awaited them on this fragile path forward? And how much deeper did their individual scars run, ready to surface at any moment? As they sat together, the millionaire and the girl with dreams and shades of charcoal, the door felt ajar, but the corridor beyond remained shrouded in shadows. Jack understood they had ignited a spark, but what truth still lingered, waiting to be illuminated? Jack's resolve solidified as he considered their next steps. He realized that igniting change would require not just intentions, but actionable strategies. He felt the burden of responsibility, but alongside that weight was a flicker of hope. How could he translate their shared desire for freedom into something tangible? "Emma," he began, searching for words that would invoke confidence. "Let's start small. What's one thing you've always wanted to do that you haven't had the chance to try yet?" Her eyes flitted upward, as if seeking answers among the forgotten corners of her room. "I've always wanted to try painting, but I never had the materials," she admitted, a trace of longing lacing her tone. Jack inhaled deeply. "We can fix that. I can bring you paints and brushes. What do you think?" At the mention of supplies, Emma's expression brightened. "You really mean it?" The sincerity of her question stirred something profound in Jack. He hadn't merely proposed a plan, but offered a glimmer of opportunity. He found himself smiling, a genuine response surfacing amidst the weight of his earlier doubts. "Absolutely. But it's just the beginning. Painting could be a way to express everything you've kept inside." "Yes, that's it!" she exclaimed, a flush of excitement washing over her. "I could paint my dreams." As Jack envisioned Emma immersed in color, he felt a pang of recognition. He, too, had buried his dreams under layers of expectations and responsibilities. "Now, how about you tell me about those dreams?" Jack pressed, hopeful that in this moment of focus, they could both confront their respective constraints. His words were fueled by the urgency to bridge the individual gaps between their experiences. If they could articulate their desires, perhaps they could embolden one another in action. Emma hesitated, but then her voice broke through the quiet, filled with fragile determination. "I want to travel, to see the world," she whispered. "Every painting could be a place I dream of visiting, but I'm scared. What if I never actually get to go?" Jack's heart ached. His own life was filled with travels and luxuries that now felt like burdens rather than blessings. What if we plan this out then? Choose destinations or experiences that inspire our creativity, and one day experience them for real. Like a travel bucket list? Emma's eyes widened, her doubt slowly dissipating. "Exactly." Jack felt a rush of exhilaration as they mapped out their aspirations, breathing life into imagination. Planning trips meant setting sights on freedom, which fueled their unwillingness to stay trapped in their current realities. Yet the clock chimed in the distance, and shadows unfurled around them. It was a reminder of the world that existed beyond their immediate bubble, an unsettling world filled with disillusionment and doubt. Jack winced at the thought of reality crashing the dreams they had just begun to share. "Do you think we can really do it?" Emma asked, her voice trembling slightly, pulling him from his thoughts. "I know we can," he assured her. But his own uncertainty lingered heavily, a whisper of caution embedded within his conviction. What he didn't say was that every plan held its risks. Would they dare to chase these visions of freedom, knowing it could mean confronting not only their fears, but also the parts of themselves they had hidden away for too long? Jack sensed that embarking on this new journey together would not be as simple as it seemed. He steeled himself for the deeper discussions, the likely confrontations with shadows that would rise in the process of unearthing themes that haunted them both. "Let's start writing down our dreams and goals," he decided, trying to find clarity amidst the brewing storm of thoughts. "We'll meet tomorrow, and we'll turn dreams into plans." "I can't wait," Emma beamed, and something about her sparkle reignited a flame within him. But as the moment of shared optimism shattered, a flicker of doubt remained lodged in the crevices of Jack's mind. Could they both face the reality that might lie ahead while raiding the depths of their emotional landscape? The burden of their past weighed heavily upon him. Jack felt the question clawing at the back of his mind. How far were they willing to go to reclaim their freedom, and what truths would they unveil in the process? The air turned thick with anticipation, a reckoning looming on the horizon. As he prepared for what lay ahead, Jack knew that the next steps held the potential to change everything, for better or worse. The stakes had just been raised, and the journey to unearth their truths had truly begun. Jack woke early the next morning, a restless energy coursing through him. The sunlight streamed through his window, illuminating the corners of his cluttered room, yet it wasn't enough to dispel the shadows creeping in from the edges of his consciousness. He felt the weight of yesterday's discussion still hanging over him, a volatile mix of hope and trepidation. Determined to channel this turmoil into something productive, he grabbed a notepad and pen, eager to start mapping out their plans. Each word he scribbled felt like a promise, a declaration that they wouldn't just dream, but actively pursue. He began with the destinations Emma had mentioned: the Eiffel Tower, the pyramids of Egypt, the beaches of Bali. Each one was a spark, igniting memories of his own travels. But it was a bittersweet nostalgia. He recalled the sense of adventure he'd felt, but also the gnawing sense of emptiness that had grown with every mile traveled away from authenticity. He paused, trying to bury the self-doubt. The broken pieces of himself, the hesitations he had swept under the rug for years, were now surfacing like unwanted guests. But they were here, demanding to be acknowledged, demanding action. How had he let fear of the unknown trick him into believing that comfort equated to happiness? As he prepared to meet Emma, he crafted a more structured approach to their goals. He typed up a basic framework: dreams, goals, action, with subsections for each travel destination, alongside what they could create artistically through the journey. This was not just about escaping their past. It was about building their future. He arrived at Emma's house, greeted by her warm smile, but it was evident she was wrestling with uncertainty. What if I can't paint what I see? What if I can't capture the feeling of those places? Her tone reflected a familiar fear, one Jack had faced countless times over the years. Let's start with what you do know. Paint your feelings about these places. They don't have to be perfect. They just have to come from you, he encouraged, feeling more assured than before. As they began sketching their travel bucket list, the air filled with an infectious excitement. Jack was intentional in inviting Emma's creativity to lead the way, asking her to share what colors came to mind when she thought of France, or what patterns felt evocative of the lush landscape of Bali. Each question forced him to remain present, challenging his habit of focusing on the outcome rather than the process. Yet as they fleshed out ideas, he couldn't escape the lurking anguish within. With each planned goal, he confronted the ghosts from his past. Lifelong regrets, paths untaken, the hesitation to truly go after what mattered most to him beyond societal expectations. Would these revelations help him tap into a more authentic version of himself? As they wrapped up their first brainstorming session, Emma's face glowed, while Jack felt an intermittent surge of ambition, tempered by lingering apprehensions. Would he allow his own dreams to spill onto the canvas too? This journey wasn't just about Emma painting her dreams. It was him forging a new path, taking ownership of his desires. Jack promised to bring supplies for Emma tomorrow, but he'd also challenge himself to draw something of his own, a deviation from his comfortable routine. The idea sent a jolt of anxiety through him. He'd aligned himself with comfort for far too long. That night, staring at the blank canvas he'd placed in front of him, he realized that attempting to create something worthwhile meant wrestling with vulnerability. Jack's heart raced as he dipped the brush into paint, not knowing if he was ready to confront the untapped potential within. As he made the first stroke, uncertainty threatened to cripple him, but it was the hope of discovery that kept him going. Yet, beneath the excitement, the discord of unresolved fears began to echo painfully loud in his mind. Could he manage the weight of Emma's expectations alongside his own emerging truths? Jack felt the tide rising as he ventured deeper into uncharted territory. The moment was arriving when he would have to face not only his fears, but also the long-forgotten dreams he had buried deep within. And as he continued to paint, questions loomed large. Was he ready to embrace both failure and triumph in pursuit of fulfillment? With every brushstroke, with every burst of color, he sailed into unknown waters, uncertain if he could ever find solid ground again. Jack awoke with renewed determination, the remnants of self-doubt swirling through him like leaves caught in a whirlwind. He knew today was not just about Emma. It was about him. As he prepared to meet her, his heart thumped with a symphony of nerves and excitement. Today, he would not merely be a support. He would take an active role in shaping his artistic voice. He arrived with a fresh set of art supplies, a small gesture that seemed to amplify the weight of his own intentions. Emma beamed at the sight of the vibrant paints and brushes. Her enthusiasm was infectious, but Jack felt as if the canvas of his own dreams was still blank, waiting for him to breach the surface. "Let's get started," Emma chirped, her fingers dancing over the materials. She immediately immersed herself in blending colors, her strokes confident and fluid, a stark contrast to Jack's tension. He watched her as he set up his own supplies, but the sense of obligation to shape his destiny felt paralyzing. "Are you going to paint?" Emma asked, glancing over with curiosity. "Yes, I'm going to try," he replied, the uncertainty creeping back in. Jack took a deep breath, reminding himself of their conversation yesterday about embracing vulnerability. As he picked up his brush, the moment felt monumental. He hesitated, the brush hovering over the canvas like a tightrope walker poised above the abyss. What if he failed? What if none of this turned out to be what he hoped it would be? Questions flooded his mind, but he pushed through the tangle of fears. With a swift motion, he dipped the brush into paint, letting instinct guide him. The first stroke felt electric. A vibrant blue emerged on the canvas. As he continued, he dared to harness the swirling emotions within. It didn't take long before images began to materialize, fragmented thoughts and memories woven into a tapestry of blues and greens, representing not just the places he longed to travel, but also the complexities of his internal landscape. Jack's confidence grew as he painted, a delicate balance between freedom and control. With every stroke, he allowed pieces of himself to pour out. The uncertainty, the dreams that had been shelved, the joy of what might lie ahead. For the first time, he felt the inkling of belief echoing back to him from the canvas. He was worthy of creating, worthy of dreaming. However, just as momentum built within him, a nagging voice crept in. What would happen if this didn't measure up to Emma's expectations? He glanced at her, lost in her own artistic world, laughter mixed with sighs of concentration. Her eyes sparkled with purpose. The contrasting energies stirred something in Jack's gut. He couldn't let his fears swallow him. He had to confront them head-on. What if, instead of comparing, he simply celebrated their unique journeys? Jack inhaled sharply, the realization washing over him. He could redefine success on his own terms, not tethered to the weight of external validation, particularly from someone whose artistry inspired him. Fueled by this epiphany, he painted with renewed vigor. Each stroke felt like shedding a layer of pretense, peeling back the facade that had shielded him for so long. Hours passed. The sunlight shifted, casting playful shadows across their makeshift studio. Emma reached over, her hand brushing against his, and he felt a rush of warmth at her encouragement. "I love what you've created," she said genuinely. "It's so alive." Her affirmation sparked something deep within Jack, a newfound commitment to authenticity. But as they approached the end of their session, he blinked, caught between euphoria and apprehension. Tomorrow, the realization would hit that this was merely the beginning of a far longer journey. What if he allowed this creative exploration to spill into other areas of his life? What else could he uncover about himself if he dared to embrace the unknown? As they readied to pack up, the atmosphere was thick with unvoiced questions. Jack felt a shift in himself. But how far could he take this transformation? The thrill of the uncharted beckoned. But could he maintain momentum in a world fraught with distractions and expectations? He pondered the possibilities, his mind racing at the prospect of diving deeper. The time had come to face the bigger canvas of life beyond art, a canvas that required bold strokes, unwavering commitment, and the courage to express who he truly was. With the future hanging tantalizingly close, he turned to Emma, ready to voice his thoughts. But just as he opened his mouth, he asked himself, would his pursuit of truth pull him closer to the person he longed to be, or push him further into uncharted waters where shadows still lingered? As Jack stood there, contemplating his next words, a surge of realization swept over him. He wasn't just at a crossroads. He was at the precipice of an awakening. The weight of self-imposed limitations hung in the air around him, suffocating yet invigorating. Today wasn't merely a practice session. It felt like a rite of passage. "Emma, can we talk?" he finally managed, his voice steadier than he felt. "Of course," Emma replied, her eyes lighting up with engagement. She set aside her brush and turned to face him, a mix of curiosity and encouragement radiating from her. Jack took a moment to gather his thoughts. "I've been thinking about what it means to create. It's not just the art itself, but the process of digging deeper into who we really are. I want to explore that, not just here with you, but in every part of my life." Her gaze softened, reflecting understanding. "That's beautiful," she said. "Art is such a raw expression of us. There's so much we can learn if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. What do you want to explore?" The question tethered Jack to the instant. It wasn't simply about finding his artistic voice. It was about daring to voice other aspects of his life he had buried. "I want to confront the fears that keep me from being true to myself. I'm tired of living under the shadow of expectations, my own and those of others." He spoke with an urgency he hadn't anticipated, each word echoing off the walls he had spent far too long building. Emma nodded, her expression grave yet encouraging. "It's one thing to know what holds us back, but to confront it, that's where the magic happens." Jack nodded. The acknowledgement of his struggles was liberating. He felt lighter yet heavier with the truths he had left unspoken. The brushstroke of his aspirations was still fresh, and he wanted, craved, to know how far it could extend beyond the canvas. "How do I start?" The vulnerability laced through his tone felt foreign yet captivating. "Start by being honest with yourself. What do you want? What are you afraid of? And how can you turn those fears into fuel?" Her words hung in the air, infusing him with clarity. Every aspect of his life needed that honesty. His relationships, career path, the very essence of who he was. The idea felt overwhelming, yet strangely exhilarating. "I need to explore my own creative outlet outside of this," he confessed, gesturing to the materials around them. "To confront my memories, in writing or any form that speaks to me. I need to break through the barriers I've erected in my life." "Writing sounds like a great avenue," Emma replied thoughtfully, enthusiasm bubbling beneath the surface. "Where will you begin?" In the burgeoning atmosphere, Jack sensed the longer path unfurling before him. He imagined the stories he had silenced, the feelings he needed to mold into something tangible. "I'd like to start with my travels, the experiences that shaped me, the corners of myself that felt neglected. But I also want to dive into the depths of my emotions, facing the joys and sorrows I've tucked away." "Then do it," Emma urged, her voice a beacon. "Let your experiences guide you, and don't shy away from what you discover." With every suggestion she made, Jack felt like a painter facing a blank canvas, soaking in the potential. However, shadows of doubt filtered in. Would he really follow through? Past attempts at self-discovery often fizzled out before they even began, tamed by societal expectations and the fear of failure. "Will you keep me accountable?" The request slipped from his lips, a bridge to connection. "Absolutely," Emma replied with conviction. "We'll do this together. Let's challenge ourselves to grow." Jack felt fortified by her assurance, yet trepidation still nestled in his chest. Could he stay motivated when the fear of failure loomed larger than ever? As they packed their art supplies, an unfamiliar sensation bubbled to the surface, an awareness that the journey ahead would demand resilience and authenticity, both in art and life. The blank canvas of his being was ripe for exploration, yet the unseen depths would require courage to traverse. What lay beneath the surface of his fears? As he pondered, purpose ignited within him. Tomorrow, he would take a leap into writing, a medium he hadn't touched in years. But still, a familiar question echoed in his mind. Would this delve into his innermost self illuminate the shadows, or would the pursuit lead him deeper into the very fears he sought to transcend? The morning light filtered through Jack's window, casting soft patterns on the floorboards. He woke with a mix of anticipation and dread swelling in his chest. The promise of writing, of unlocking something real inside him, now felt both exhilarating and daunting. The blank page seemed like a mirror, reflecting all the fears he had yet to confront. After a quick breakfast that barely registered in his mind, Jack settled at his desk. The air buzzed with potential, yet his hands felt heavy and uncertain. He hovered over the fresh notebook, the crisp pages like empty canvases whispering for a splash of ink. Already, doubt clung to him like a shroud. Would he really be able to put his truth on paper? He took a deep breath and scribbled the first line. "I remember the first time I stepped off a plane." The words felt awkward, unfamiliar. This was not merely a recounting. This was about revealing his inner landscape. With each word he penned, memories bubbled up, vivid images of sunsets in foreign lands, laughter shared with strangers, and the ache of loneliness even in the crowd. The travels he long ignored started to take shape, but so did the emotional terrain he'd carefully navigated by avoiding the deepest wounds. Faces from his past danced in his mind, people whose opinions had woven around him like chains, locking away his authentic self. "Stop overthinking it," he muttered to himself, trying to shake off the oppressive weight. But the truth was relentless. Whenever he painted his journey, he could see the obstacles rising just beyond the horizon, each representing a fear he'd never voiced. Fear of judgment, of insufficiency, and the most crippling of all, fear of not being enough. A few pages in, Jack paused, feeling the tremor of vulnerability coursing through him. This wasn't just prose, it was a confrontation. If he let his words flow freely, what truths might emerge? What skeletons might he inadvertently rattle? Suddenly, the sound of his phone vibrating on the desk jolted him from his reverie. Emma's message flashed across the screen. "How's the writing going? Remember, you're not alone in this." Something warm spread inside him. Her support felt like an anchor among turbulent waters. It invigorated him, pushing aside the waves of self-doubt. He typed a quick response back. "Just starting. It's a lot harder than I thought." He hesitated, staring at the screen, contemplating whether to bare his soul further in the message. Instead, he pressed send and returned his attention to the notebook. He thought about young Jack, the one reluctant to share even an inkling of desire. There was power in acknowledgement, yet the power also terrified him. The act of creation, he realized, was not just about beauty and expression. It was an invitation to dig up buried parts of himself. With renewed resolve, Jack began writing again. The ink flowed, and as it did, he landed on the fears clawing at him. "I worry I won't express my truth fully. I fear that being vulnerable will push people away, that my voice might feel unworthy." Each word acted like a chisel, breaking down the barriers he had spent years cementing. But was he truly ready to expose himself so rawly? As he wrote about facing his fears, he felt a flicker of rebellion against the limitations he had accepted without question. Despite the cathartic release, Anxiety gripped him again as he questioned the outcome. Would he have the strength to show these words to anyone, let alone Emma? Sharing would expose more than just words. It would lay his entire self bare, both the light and the darkness. Around lunchtime, he decided he couldn't wait for Emma's encouragement to explore further. He pushed away from the desk and made a decision. He would invite her over later that evening, not for a critique, but for an exploration of ideas where he could share even the rawest bits of his writing. Perhaps they could create together, support each other in their respective journeys, not knowing what uncharted territory might arise. As he made plans, a chilling thought festered. A whisper questioning whether he could truly face not just the fears accumulated over the years, but the potential repercussions of unveiling his story. Outside, the wind rustled the trees as Jack looked out, feeling the gravity of the new path stretching out before him. Tomorrow's engagement with Emma held the potential for both liberation and confrontation. What truths might unfold in the face of shared creativity? Would he emerge stronger, or would he find himself swallowed by his own fears? The sun sank low on the horizon as Jack prepared for Emma's visit, the pulsing anticipation mingling with unease. He nested his notes, the weight of what he had written feeling like an unsteady tower. Vulnerability had always danced dangerously across his edges, but today he was resolved to confront it head-on. The doorbell rang. Jack felt a rush of adrenaline and took a deep breath, smoothing the pages with his palms, before opening the door to Emma's hopeful smile. She looked radiant, embodying a spirit of unrestrained creativity that filled the room with warmth. "Hi, Jack. I can't wait to see what you've been working on," she exclaimed, her excitement infectious. "Thanks, Emma. I'm excited too, but I'm also a little nervous," he confessed, the truth tumbling out. Jack led her to his workspace where an array of notes lay scattered like the scattered pieces of his mind. "I feel like it's a lot easier to paint than to write," he admitted, anxiety creeping in. The thought of sharing his truth felt like standing on the edge of a precipice, looking down into the abyss of the unknown. "Art is about expressing what's inside," Emma said, her tone steady yet enthusiastic. "You just need to tap into your heart. That's where the magic begins." As Jack glanced at his notes, he appreciated the innocence and wisdom in her words. He knew that if he embraced this opportunity, it could bring forth a transformation he had only begun to contextualize. "Okay, let's start," he said, his voice steadied by the familiarity of their shared journey. He took a seat across from her, laying out his notes. "So, I wrote about my own fears, how I've always resided in this bubble of expectations, and what that's done to me. I shared the stories of my travels, but intertwined them with the emotions and struggles I faced." "I want to hear it all," Emma urged, settling into her seat, eyes fierce with encouragement. Inhaling deeply, Jack began to read aloud. As the words poured forth, he spoke of his childhood, the formidable moments of loneliness amidst apparent success, and the passionate, sometimes misguided drive for validation. With every delivery, Jack felt a burden lift, each sentence granting him clarity. For the first time, he explored the depths of vulnerability without fear of judgment. The essence of who he was began to unravel gracefully before Emma's attentive gaze. He felt the release of pent-up emotions. The unexpressed truths danced from the pages. Emma listened intently, her expressions reflecting both empathy and understanding. "You've been through so much," she said after he finished. "But the way you're telling your story is powerful. It shows growth." His chest expanded with pride, a new layer of confidence building within him. He observed Emma's instinct to connect, her honesty reverberating through the space. "You think so?" Jack replied, trying to absorb her validation. "Absolutely," Emma affirmed, a firm nod punctuating her words. "Now it's your turn to pour all that energy into your art. Let it flow." In that moment, Jack felt a surge of creative fire. He hadn't merely shared his narrative, but had dismantled walls blocking his authenticity. With new resolve, he picked up his brush, narrowing the gap between his written words and the painting that lay before him. Hours passed, ink mingling with paint as Jack meticulously manifested his journey onto the canvas. He poured colors with reckless abandon, not worrying about perfection. It was about connection, healing, and expression. Grievances transformed into vivid landscapes, hues exploding across the canvas as he captured not just his pain, but his aspirations too. When he turned to Emma, he saw that her eyes glistened with inspiration. "Jack, this is incredible," she exclaimed as she watched the images translating vital truths. "You've captured so much emotion. It feels alive." His heart raced as he stepped back to admire the piece. His struggles, his fears, his aspirations painted across the canvas. For the first time in his life, barriers had fallen, transmuting his insecurities into an emblem of courage. This feels right," he whispered, internally committed to the growth he had achieved. As the last strokes fell onto the canvas, Jack and Emma stood in silence, the weight of their shared experiences resting like kindred spirits. Jack felt reborn, no longer trapped within societal expectations or haunted by insecurities. With a newfound clarity, his voice rang deep. "Emma, I have to promise myself to keep creating, to keep exploring my truth through writing and painting. I want to inspire that same courage in you and everyone else who feels stuck." Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement as she nodded, ready to embark on their continued journeys together. "We'll keep pushing each other to grow. I can't wait to see where this leads us." In the twilight of that day, Jack understood he had not only unearthed his own truth, but had also ignited a flame of purpose within Emma. With each stroke and story, they had solidified their bonds of friendship. Together, they would conquer thresholds untraveled. Jack poured his heart into the canvas, and in doing so, achieved something he had long desired, a profound connection to his authentic self. Where there was once uncertainty, now lay a path paved with validated potential. Jack Thompson was no longer merely a millionaire. He had transcended into a creator, a fearless explorer ready to embrace each flicker of inspiration as it unfolded before him. This was his moment, a triumphant milestone where creativity and authenticity converged, marking an era defined not by wealth or status, but by genuine understanding and individual transformation. Now, it's time for you to embrace growth and creativity, just like Jack. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Do it. It makes all the difference. Comment your reactions and theories about Jack's incredible ending and transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion. Don't wait. Even one more second.